On today's Two on Your Side Town Hall, two criminal cases making headlines in Western New York today. A big name in local politics charged with rape and an admitted rapist back in court. Analysis on both coming up.
Plus, a lot of questions lately about gas prices and will the move by the White House actually bring down the cost anytime soon? Some answers on that ahead.
And baseball on break. With the major leagues in lockout, we get some perspective on what's next and why this is happening.
And we're glad you're here with us on this Thursday. All eyes on a couple of local courtrooms today, one in Erie County, the other in Niagara, both centering around rape allegations. One case is just getting started, the other likely coming to a conclusion, though a lot of questions remain.
In Lockport today, 20-year-old Christopher Belter was added to the sex offender registry as a level 3 offender. That's the highest possible. He was a teen when he admittedly raped 4 teenage girls at his home in Lewiston, and his case caused national outrage due to his sentence of only probation.
Meanwhile, in Buffalo, longtime Democratic political operative Steve Pigeon was remanded to jail without bail as he was charged with rape and sexual assault for an alleged attack on a child back in 2016. He faces charges that, if convicted, could land him in prison for life. Joining us now to give us some perspective on both of these cases is Frank LoTempio III, an attorney with LoTempio PC Law Group. Frank, always good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
And we want to start with the Lewiston rape case that's gotten so much attention because Belter did not get prison time despite the multiple rapes, and he also violated his probation. And an attorney from one of the victims said today that labeling him a level 3 sex offender, which is the most severe, shows the absurdity of him avoiding prison time to begin with. So to even the casual observer, there certainly seems to be a disconnect between being designated a level 3 sex offender. So to remind our viewers, that means it's been determined that he is at high risk of repeating the offense and that he's a threat to public safety, and yet not serving any time in prison. And there's been so much outrage in this case and the message that it's sending. We're wondering what light you can shine on what happened here and what the potential impact of this might be going forward.
Well, let me first tell you that the Soar Evaluation is based on, it's a chart that a lot of times the DA goes through, the court goes through, and the defense attorneys go through. And there's an argument about what kind of levels that you can be at. It's based on the number of victims, the number of times. Some of the characteristics are subjective. So him not going to jail and being designated a level 3 sex offender is really not the barometer, right? It's that the two don't go hand in hand. I will tell you this, I can see why the public could be outraged with something like this, but it's tough to second guess a judge's decisions because they're getting so much information from the defense attorneys, and Barry Covert's a wonderful attorney, the DA's office, and outside influences. You know, the public has to remember in these cases, and they are likely do not know this, is that the sex offender probation is very, very, very difficult. There are many times that people do not succeed through this sex offender probation because it is so onerous. You're taking away significant rights of people. You're taking away cell phones, cameras, things of that nature, and it's very, very difficult. Now, in this case, from what I understand, one of the probably the most important factors in this case was that Dr. Heffler provided a report to Judge Murphy in this case. Dr. Heffler is really the premier sex offender psychologist, psychiatrist in this area. And I think he made a very positive recommendation for the defendant in this case, which carries a lot of weight. And I will tell you this, it carries a lot of weight in any court in this county and any court in Niagara County.
And Frank, quickly, just to wrap it up on this particular case, explain to us what level 3 sex offender means. I mean, we mentioned it is the most serious. He'll have to, have his address published on the internet for the rest of his life, that sort of thing. What should we take away from that?
Well, you're not living around schools. You can't be around children less than 18 years old. They can send around pamphlets that you are living in this neighborhood. It's at times, and maybe rightfully so, humiliating. It's a very big, scarlet A, I could tell you that.
We want to turn now to the rape accusations against Steve Pigeon. I think a lot of people were surprised to see someone as prominent as he is remanded with no bail. And there were arguments in court over this because he's been under federal indictment for years in another case where he's been under the watch of federal probation officers there and hasn't missed a court date. What goes into that decision, and can he still get bail?
Anytime you go to court, you can make a bail application. And you can make a bail application anytime in between. You could just simply file a motion with the court to make a bail application. In this case, though, you're talking about an A2 felony, which is 25 to life, 25 years life. You're talking about a number of B felonies, which are mandatory minimum 5 years to 25 years. And you're talking about somebody with 2 convictions, a state conviction already and a federal conviction. And that's very, I mean, those are all qualifying offenses that he's charged with. So there was going to be some bail. But you're talking about a person with a federal conviction now and awaiting sentencing and a state conviction. I actually am not surprised that there is no bail.
Finally, Frank, we want to ask you about the difficulty in prosecuting a case like this, because this allegedly happened 5 years ago, and it came out because of a child telling her mother about what she says happened. We don't know what other evidence is available. I want to listen here what our Dave McKinley asked the DA today.
I won't ask what it is because I know you wouldn't tell me, but I do need to ask you, do you have anything more than the word, an allegation of a child?
That I'm not going to talk about any other evidence, but I have her word though.
Okay. Do you have anything more than that? I'm not asking what you have.
Yeah.
But I mean, you must to bring a charge like this, no?
Yes.
So, Frank, what does that exchange tell you about this case and the evidence?
There has to be some sort of documentary or physical evidence involved. I doubt that there is any rape kit or anything of that nature because it's been 5 years. I mean, there could be, you don't know. But that's easily reportable, and that's mandatory reportable if someone goes to a hospital and gets a rape kit of that nature. I'm assuming that there has to be some documentation, some other, it could be other witnesses involved that saw the interaction between the two of them. It could be text messages between him and his family. It could be a confession through, not to a police agency, but even to the mother or the father of the child. That's what I would assume, because they are very difficult cases. I've defended these cases, and anytime that you have somebody that claim is 5 years old, it's a big deal. I mean, I harp on that. It's the first thing the defense attorney is going to start to question. Why didn't this come out earlier? How come it just came out? Who did she first? Who was the outcry witness? Did the outcry witness then make her suggest that more happened than actually did happen? It's a big deal.
A conversation behind the headlines of these high-profile cases. We've been chatting with Frank LoTempio III, an attorney and legal analyst. Thanks again for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Like most of you watching, we keep an eye on gas prices here in Western New York since we've seen this dramatic increase this year. And over the past week, prices in Western New York have actually dropped a penny, now at $3.47 a gallon. We may see prices go down a little bit more, at least in the short term, because you may have noticed crude oil has gotten a lot cheaper over the past week, and oil-producing countries have announced that they're increasing their production a little bit. It's been more than a week now since the president's announcement that the U.S. Energy Department would release more than 50 million barrels of oil from the strategic reserve, also to try to lower the cost of fuel.
And the questions a lot of people have asked, will we actually see that relief at the pump? And if so, when? Well, first, a look at where things stand. This is from Gas Buddy, and the red line shows the average price of gas in Western New York for the last 3 months. The country as a whole is in blue, and you can see that big spike in the first few weeks of October. But since the start of November, things have been pretty stable.
So back to the White House plan again to release 50 million barrels of oil. Of that, 32 million will be exchanged or loaned to refineries to be paid back with interest, and 18 million barrels will be sold. The idea is to try to make oil cheaper with more supply, and that should drive down gas prices. But our Verify source here, energy analyst Andy Lippo, says those barrels won't be available to be loaned available until next year, and there's no guarantee that the ones being sold will actually go to U.S. buyers.
The reason that the consumer will not see a significant decline is because the oil market remains tight. And while this has accelerated the supply of oil, it hasn't fixed the problem because most of that oil still needs to be paid back in the future.
So since this release isn't new production and there's no guarantee on who's getting it, there's no guarantee that the release will actually lower gas prices.
But we know that people will be crossing their fingers and hoping so and following it very closely because it's tough. I mean, this is the main driver of inflation generally right now, so much higher energy prices.
It's good to understand more of what goes into it because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people kind of see it as a black and white issue, but there's more to it.
Yeah, it's a complex industry.